The cafe buzzed with the usual weekday chaos, clinking cups, soft indie music, and the murmur of conversations all blurring into one steady hum. Outside, rain spilled from the sky in relentless sheets, soaking umbrellas and fogging up windows. Inside, Emily Carter sat alone at a small corner table, sketchpad open, her fingers stained with charcoal and ink. She wrapped her hands around a lukewarm cup of black coffee, the only thing she could afford after a long day teaching at the public elementary school across town. Her worn-out coat still clung to the dampness of the weather, and her tired eyes traced the lines of a half-finished drawing, a child dancing under an umbrella. A loud chime signaled the door opening again. Emily glanced up. A tall man in a dark suit stepped in, shaking off the rain. He carried a tray with a sandwich and coffee, scanning the cafe for an empty seat. Every table was taken. Some with groups chatting over laptops, others with solo patrons like herself, heads buried in screens or books. His expression was calm but strained. His tie slightly loosened. He didn't look like someone used to asking for space. Without thinking too much, Emily raised her hand and motioned to the empty chair across from her. "Hey," she said gently. "You can sit here, if you want. I don't bite." The man blinked, then gave a small, grateful smile. "Thanks. That's kind of you." He slid into the seat, careful not to knock over her art supplies. For a few minutes, they sat in silence, he sipping his coffee, she shading in raindrops on her sketch. There was no spark, no grand moment. Just two strangers in a crowded cafe, sharing a quiet space. But there was something peaceful about it. Emily didn't know his name. Didn't know that he wasn't just another worn-down New Yorker trying to escape the rain. And he didn't know that she was barely holding her life together. They were just two people passing through each other's day. And neither of them had any idea how much that moment would change everything. The rain softened outside, but inside the cafe, a cozy quiet began to settle. The rush had passed, and now only a few lingering patrons remained, wrapped in books and half-drunk lattes. Emily stole a glance at the man across from her. He looked tired, not just from the weather or the day, but from something deeper. There were faint lines near his eyes, and the way he stirred his coffee absent-mindedly said more than words ever could. "Rough day?" she finally asked, hoping it didn't sound too personal. He looked up, surprised by the question, then nodded with a faint smile. "You could say that." Emily chuckled. "Join the club." He studied her sketchpad. "Are you an artist?" "Trying to be," she said. "I teach art at an after-school program for kids. It doesn't pay much, but it keeps me sane." There was a pause before she added, almost self-consciously, "And I'm starting a little weekend class in the Bronx. Mostly kids from shelters. They don't have art supplies, so I've been picking up extra shifts. It's slow going, but worth it." The man was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "That's really admirable." Emily shrugged, brushing a loose curl from her face. "Someone once gave me a box of crayons when I was little. I never forgot how it made me feel. I guess I just want to be that for someone else." A small smile tugged at his lips. "I have a daughter. 7 years old. She used to love drawing. After her mom passed, she stopped." Emily's gaze softened. "I'm sorry." "Thank you," he said, eyes distant. I'm trying to hold it all together for her. Work, life, everything. Some days I feel like I'm barely keeping up." For a moment, they just sat in shared silence, strangers, yet somehow no longer strangers. There was no romantic tension. Just something raw and human passing between them. Two people who had both lost something, both still trying to give. And neither of them knew their lives were quietly beginning to intertwine. The cafe's cozy hum was beginning to thin. Chairs scraped against the tile as customers trickled out, jackets zipped and umbrellas popped open in preparation for the cold drizzle outside. Daniel glanced at his watch. "I should go," he said quietly, standing up and gathering his things. "Thanks again, for the seat, and the company." Emily smiled, closing her sketch pad. "It was nice talking to you." They exchanged a final nod, and just like that, he disappeared into the crowd of umbrellas outside, vanishing into the damp New York evening. Emily sat for a moment longer, letting the quiet settle in. She sipped the last of her coffee, then slung her worn tote bag over her shoulder and headed toward the door, unaware that, in her hurry, she'd left her sketchpad behind. 10 minutes later, the barista was clearing tables when he noticed the leather-bound pad. Curious, he flipped it open, and saw pages filled with delicate pencil sketches of children playing, laughing, dreaming. One page had a little girl dancing in the rain, her smile capturing something so heartbreakingly innocent it stopped him in his tracks. A few pages in, a handwritten note was scrawled in the margin. "Don't give up. Someone out there believes in you, even if they haven't met you yet." Daniel, having returned to grab a forgotten umbrella, paused as he saw the barista flipping through it. "That's hers," he said quickly. "She was sitting right here." The barista handed it over. "Incredible work." Daniel nodded slowly, flipping through the pages again. There was a strange ache in his chest. His daughter, Lila, used to draw like this. The style, the emotion, it was almost identical. Something about it felt faded. Then, without overthinking, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a sleek black business card. On the back, he wrote, "If you find this, let's talk. I have a proposal. Daniel Harper." He handed both the sketchpad and the card to the barista. "If she comes back," he said, "please make sure she gets this." And with that, he walked out into the rain, quietly hoping she would. The next morning, Emily returned to the cafe in a panic, the rain now a gentle mist. Her tote bag swung anxiously at her side as she approached the counter, breathless. Hi, sorry," she blurted to the barista. "Did anyone happen to find a sketchpad? It's brown leather, full of drawings. I left it here last night." The barista smiled. "You're Emily, right?" She blinked. "Yeah." He reached under the counter and pulled out her sketchpad. "A man dropped this off for you, he left a card inside." Heart pounding, Emily opened it and saw the sleek black card tucked between two pages. On the back was a handwritten note. "If you find this, let's talk. I have a proposal. Daniel Harper." Her breath caught in her throat. Daniel Harper. The Daniel Harper. Founder of Harper Technologies, billionaire philanthropist, widowed single father, she had seen his name in headlines but never imagined it belonged to the quiet man across from her yesterday. Still stunned, she dialed the number printed on the card. 2 days later, she stood in the glass lobby of Harper Towers, fidgeting with her coat sleeves. An assistant led her to a sunlit office overlooking Central Park. Daniel stood by the window, smiling when he saw her. "You came," he said warmly. "I almost didn't," Emily admitted, laughing nervously. "I thought this had to be a mistake." "It's not," he replied, motioning for her to sit. He spoke gently, sharing his story, how he'd built his company from scratch, how he'd lost his wife 3 years ago, and how his daughter, Lila, hadn't picked up a crayon since. "Your sketches, they reminded me of her," he said. "Of what she lost. Of what she could still find." Then he leaned forward. "I want to start a foundation, an art program for kids who've been through trauma. I want you to lead it." Emily froze. "Me? You already give from a place most people don't even know exists," he said. "You're not just an artist. You're a light. Let me help you share it." Tears welled in her eyes. For the first time in a long time, someone truly saw her. And believed in what she carried. 1 year later, the cafe buzzed with life again, but today, the air was filled with something more than coffee and conversation. Laughter echoed from the back tables, where children proudly displayed their art on easels and cork boards. Paint-streaked hands held paper masterpieces high, and the windows were decorated with drawings of hope, healing, and imagination. A banner above the entrance read, "The Lila Foundation, celebrating 1 year of art, heart, and healing." Emily stood near the counter, a soft smile tugging at her lips as she watched her students excitedly point out their work to parents and volunteers. She wore a paint-splattered apron over a floral dress, her curls tucked behind her ears, and joy radiating from her in waves. She had never looked more at home. Beside her stood Daniel, casually dressed for once, his arm resting lightly around the shoulders of his daughter, Lila, a bright-eyed girl now drawing a vibrant cityscape in watercolors. A year ago, she wouldn't even touch a pencil. Now, she couldn't stop creating. "She hasn't stopped talking about this day for weeks," Daniel said, watching his daughter. "She says Miss Emily is her favorite person in the world." Emily's cheeks flushed. "She's a miracle, Daniel." He turned to her with a look of quiet admiration. "No. You are." A reporter from a local magazine approached, camera in hand. "Mr. Harper, may I ask, what inspired this foundation?" Daniel looked around the cafe, soaking in the joy, the transformation, the light that filled the once dreary room. Then his eyes found Emily again. "It all started here," he said simply. "In this cafe. On a rainy day when I had nowhere to sit. And a stranger, this amazing woman, offered me kindness without knowing who I was." He paused, the emotion catching in his throat. Sometimes the smallest acts change everything. As the reporter snapped a photo, Emily looked around at the artwork, the children, the hope. And she realized, her life hadn't just changed. It had blossomed, because she had made space for someone, expecting nothing in return. And in doing so, she helped create a space for so many more.